Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me and allowing me to continue to be your daily advocate. If you're new here or you're not subscribed for any reason, please do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button. Thank you to all of you who have been watching and following me for so long. It truly means a lot, and I'm glad that I can be this person.
$1.694 trillion market cap, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of money missing from the space. We're off by 0.72, but you can see the numbers are off greatly here. 15, 16%, 15+% for XRP, 37,500 plus for Bitcoin, 2,500, almost 2,600 for Ethereum. We see XRP right now at 70 cents. It dipped down into 67, 68 cents overnight, off by 15.65% on the 7-day, 8.43 on the 24-hour. Look at the range of price right here. We see 68 cents on the bottom, 79 cents on the top. We will keep an eye on it. We are at 70 cents right now. I want to get started right here with this clip. Now, be clear, we're going to listen to this clip from recently from the Joe Rogan show, which they explain exactly what's happening with the approach of the World Economic Forum. Now, we've talked about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab here, the Great Reset as it is that they talked about so often, right? Also, the you will own nothing and you will be happy, right? I want to play this clip for you and let you see exactly what they're talking about here, and then I'll give you another clip that's more clear to hear. Check this out.
They call it on their own website, they call it the Great Reset. That's what they say themselves.
Yeah, that's a bizarre thing to do, to openly. Why do you think they openly discuss it that way? And openly, because the Great Reset has always been this gigantic conspiracy theory among the online folks. Like, this is all part of the Great Reset. Well, when he wrote a fucking book called The Great Reset, you're like, hey man, shouldn't you be hiding this?
And in 2017 at Harvard, he's saying, you know, we're going to basically, all of these world leaders will penetrate their cabinets with our young global leaders. He's open. He's open.
And he's very open about it. In fact, I found the actual original clip here. I'm going to play for you now. Check it out.
When you brought the Young Global Leaders Program here for executive education at the Schwab College, but there are two countries in the world now in which the young global leaders have emerged. Tell us just a bit about that in terms of the governance.
Yes, actually, this notion to integrate young leaders is part of the World Economic Forum since many years. And I have to say, when I mention our names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. And that's true in Argentina too. Well, that's true in Argentina as well. It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. I'm here with the president, who's a young global leader, but what is important for me is those young global leaders have an opportunity to come here. And we, in addition to the young global leaders, we have now the global shapers in 450 cities around the world.
450 cities around the world. Now, you may be asking yourself, Brett, what does this have to do with cryptocurrency and investing? Listen, he'll tell you.
Diversity fosters new ideas. New ideas generate the experimentation needed to make the most of the fourth industrial revolution.
There you have it. So this is about the fourth industrial revolution and moving that in lockstep with their agenda for the Great Reset. Now, I'm going to play for you here and set up here. We got several clips I want to play here, and I'm going to let it run here. This is from about a year and a half ago here, but I want you to pay attention to what we're going to talk about because, again, the information I just shared with you from the Joe Rogan show tells you that it is recent. And I've got some information before we get out of here from just days ago that tells you how the agenda for debt reduction, debt suspension, and debt cancellation is still very much on the table as recent as 6 days ago. Listen to this run right here. I'm going to play this. Let's start here. Shout out to XRP Crypto Wolf. World Bank President David Malpass talked about the following global topics for today's virtual G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting: debt reduction, debt suspension, debt transparency, debt resolution mechanisms. Let's take a look at some of this stuff. This stuff is important, guys, and I'm going to tell you why. Because we know that there was a liquidity crisis before the pandemic hit the planet. We knew that. Cryptopolis and myself have been reporting on it extensively. There was a shortage of capital flow. People were running out of funds. Well, let's take a look at just some of the bullet points here. Debt suspension. I urge you to extend the time frame of Debt Service Suspension Initiative, the DSSI, which I covered with you, I believe last week. We went over some of these documents. We'll take a look at those again just to reaffirm this conversation and how deeply this conversation is being had. Because what I can say here is this. We're going to look at this information now. I don't know about a complete debt cancellation for the globe or the U.S., but what I can tell you is we're going to have a serious conversation about the debt suspension, a forbearance, if you will, for many countries. And wait till you hear the tune of this forbearance, okay? So, all right, so he urges everyone to extend the time frame of the Debt Service Suspension Initiative through the end of 21 and commit to give the initiative as broad a scope as possible. We've made a great deal of progress in the DSSI in a short period of time, but more needs to be done. They're recognizing the severity of the situation across the globe. Now, debt reduction, with immediate steps, longer suspension of debt payments, a DSSI scope that includes more debt and more official bilateral creditors, participation by commercial creditors, and the World Bank's large positive net flows. Many of the poorest countries won't be able to make the resulting debt burden sustainable in the medium term. The economic repercussions from the pandemic are expected to inflict lasting scars on the growth through lower investment, erosion of human capital, and retreat from global trade and supply linkages. Now, I urge the G20 to open the door to consultations about debt overhang itself and effective ways to reduce the net present value of both official bilateral and commercial debt for the poorest countries. Now, it's important to note here as we move through this stuff that, you know, what they're really addressing here is, think about debt. All right, somebody's the debtor and somebody's the deadee, right? If you are holding someone's debt, that's where the problem is. The problem isn't as simple as country A can't pay the bills, so we're just going to excuse them. Because country A has borrowed the money from somebody, like lender one, right? Well, lender one needs to be made whole. How does that happen? It either has to happen by a larger creditor coming in and buying the debt from the holder and making them whole, or you're going to refinance or restructure the debt that is existing between the two entities. So, then you do debt transparency here, and I'm just taking you through these sections. The substantial resistance to this degree of transparency because many parts of the current system rely on asymmetric information where one party or another takes advantage as the contract is written. Pay attention to that part. The cycle is hard to break. and there is noticeable reluctance of creditors and debtors to go in the direction of balanced debt resolutions and transparency of debt and investment contracts. Balancing the built-in protection of vested interest will be hard, but it is critical for better development outcomes. In conclusion, the situation in developing countries is increasingly desperate. Time is short. We need to take action quickly on debt suspension, debt reduction, and debt resolution mechanisms and debt transparency. Well, how about that for a call to action? This is David Malpass from the World Bank. This is not a YouTuber, not a podcaster, not somebody who believes in conspiracy theories. If you want to see what a debt cancellation, debt forgiveness, debt suspension looks like, well, this is it. You don't need to look at a conspiracy theory. They're doing it. Now, what stage are they in of doing it, implementing this? Well, they're in the stage of suspension of debt to a great degree, right? A forbearance, if you will. So there was the conversation from the World Bank and the G20 talking about debt forbearance, debt transparency, debt cancellation, all of that from 2020. Look at this. From 1 month ago, the World Bank demands faster G20 debt relief as poor nations are squeezed. Look at this. From 6 days ago, this is G20 Indonesia G20 Summit, the finance ministers and the central bank governors meeting on February 17th and 18th, just a few days ago. And you know what the agenda is there? G20 debt relief efforts have struggled to gain traction. You don't say. The IMF, the World Bank experts call for stronger measures. The point being is that it hasn't changed. And in fact, it's gotten worse because just as we pointed out earlier, some people who have lent the money, the creditor, need to be made whole in this situation. And that needs to get resolved, because it's one thing to say, look, we'll restructure the debt. And it's another thing to say that, well, we need to cancel the debt because the person holding the debt needs to be made whole somehow. Now let's take a look at this. This is Mark Phillips right here. Shout out to Mark Phillips. Just shared this morning. It's time for a new Bretton Woods moment now. Yeah, says the IMF here. Take a look at this. You know, the global economic system is in dire need of an overhaul. Remember, this is about the fourth industrial revolution. This is about the banks talking about climate change, which is really about moving from the paper friction of the world to going green using carbon neutral things like the XRP ledger or a private ledger off of the XRP ledger for the central banking system to launch CBDCs, which is also about programmable money. If we come down here and we just pick it up here, it says, tinkering with the existing rules cannot provide a way out of the current integrum. It says here, if you look at this, it is time for another Bretton Woods moment. Bretton Woods was created behind the idea of the US dollar becoming the global reserve currency. So when you hear them say it's time for another Bretton Woods moment, it's time to solve the issue of the US dollar being the global reserve currency, because it was the pound before that. To revive the international economic architecture and prepare it for the challenges of the 21st century. Steps in this direction have already been taken, they say. The 2030 agenda forged by the United Nations offers a transformative plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity for the 21st century, analogous to that developed at the Bretton Woods in 1944, which again really crowned the US dollar in that moment in 1944 as the global reserve currency. But G20 ministers who gathered last week in Indonesia missed the opportunity to advance the agenda for deeper reform. A renewed multilateral order must prioritize the role of global public goods that are needed to deliver shared prosperity on a healthy planet, promote cooperation, collective actions, bring fairness, balanced market outcomes, coordinate policy initiatives and mitigate common risk. You know the rest of it, right? Well, I really, it rings to me here, to share prosperity, healthy planet, going green, talking about the role of public goods. It brings me back when I hear them say that about public good for prosperity and health of the global economy and planet and financial system in the world as they lay it out. I am reminded of this. But for me, this clarifies my understanding that exactly what I have believed from what I have learned from this company and their goals and the market infrastructure they've been building for the rest of the world to be able to use this in a manner that this can truly be a decentralized ledger for all the money. Listen again.
Ledger's hyper-efficiency and liquidity enables developers globally to support numerous use cases from DeFi, payments, consumer applications. And you don't need anybody's permission to interact with the XRP Ledger, right? It's a public good. It's an open source, decentralized, there aren't administrators. You just submit transactions and everybody who participates executes them.
There you have it. David Schwartz tells us the XRP Ledger is a public good, right? And that was really out like late last year.
So enjoy your day, everybody. I'm always here for you. Leave any comments or questions below and be sure to subscribe. But thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you. Enjoy your day, and I always have your back. So thanks so much, everybody.